Hello and welcome to the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast. I am your host Ben Porter and I am joined by my co-host for this episode, Charlotte Porter. How are you doing, Charlotte?
I'm alright. Hello.
And we are joined by our guest, Mark Cooke, the convention overlord for AireCon. How are you doing, Mark?
Good, thanks, yeah. I'm just thinking about changing my job title now.
Yeah.
You have to.
That's the convention overlord title from Dave Wright.
Tabletop
Scotland.
Tabletop guys, yeah.
I think, to be fair, he gave himself that title. What's your official title?
So when on the company's house thing, I think I'm down as show director and founder.
I like show director. It's a good title.
It sounds slightly sinister, I think. It's some sort of evil ringmaster.
Yeah, dance for me. Well, there's four of us, and so we had to try and think of a different director thing for each one.
Oh, okay.
So we've got like Ben is our financial director, and then we have we just made them up because our accountant told us we had to have something. I quite liked junior executive because then it felt like I could ride around in a sports car or something.
It sounded a bit like Flash Harry.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about AireCon a bit more later on. But one of the things we like to do in the show is to find out a little bit more about the individuals themselves, a little look at their gaming history. So, how did you get into tabletop gaming, Mark? So
I suppose, and it's something I've been reflecting on a bit with my wife, where she's not as into it as I am. And I was kind of thinking back, and I think there's probably two types of families, families that game and families that don't. And not necessarily like, big games that I might play now, but certainly growing up, we'd always play cards or play, Monopoly or whatever as a family. Yeah. And then even over the years, as I moved out, went to uni and stuff, whenever I'd go back for Christmas or whatever, we'd always still get the cards out, get the games out. Even with like my nan and stuff, we used to play Scabby Queen with her and things like that. And then probably while I was at secondary school, I got into some of the Games Workshop stuff.
Nice.
So 40K and Necromunda and stuff like that, and used to paint all my armies and things. But then I stopped doing that and got into RPGs for a little while, and then in the meantime at some point I thought I might go back certainly into Necromunda. I used to quite enjoy that, but then found out that my dad had chucked all of my minis away.
What?
By accident. He didn't do it on purpose.
Oh, they're probably worth quite a lot now as well, some of those original Necromunda figures.
Yeah, probably, because they were all the lead ones back then. So it's about 20 years ago or something. But he'd not done it on purpose, but I think that I'd kept them in an old toolbox that he'd done with, and then he just saw it and was like, oh, this is that old toolbox that I don't need anymore, and chucked it out. Not realising it was full of probably hundreds of pounds worth of minis at the time.
Intentional or not, it still hurts.
Yeah. So that I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to go back into that. And so I probably wasn't really into it. Still, like at Christmas and stuff, playing when I was back home. And then it's probably maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, and I was on a weekend away, and some guys there had brought some games, some of the more sort of modern games. There's still, it's like things maybe like Apples to Apples and Carcassonne and Catan and games like that. And I just started playing them, and I was like, wow, these are really fun. Like, it's a much quicker experience than something like Monopoly or Cluedo or whatever, but it's way more fun and having more control in these games than you would in those. And then just really, fell kind of head deep into it from there. And I think within a year, my collection went from a couple of games, 60 plus games. I went to UK Games Expo about 6 months later after that, and have been every year since. And so that's really how it all came about.
Excuse me a minute, Mark. We're having a problem with a very noisy tortoise. Just give me a minute.
Well, do you want me to take him out?
Yeah, if you take him out. I don't think he's been fed either. That's maybe why he's a bit antsy. So you came back to tabletop gaming reasonably recently then?
Yeah, certainly. Like I said, in the last sort of 6-7 years, yeah, the way I kind of just got back into it, and I think that's also probably part of where we maybe see some of the curve and like some of the explosion of the hobby over the last few years as well. So it's probably around then, and things like Tabletop was just the Will Wheaton show was just starting, so I used to watch that a lot, and Watch It Played, it was just starting out, so I used to watch that quite a bit, and so it wasn't just I'd suddenly started playing games again. It was like just fully immersed in this hobby of, just watching loads of stuff and researching loads of stuff on Board Game Geek all the time, looking at different things. And
there was always an interest there, but with the boom in tabletop, that's really where it resurged for you.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Although you've always had an interest in tabletop gaming, and we've just mentioned the recent boom in tabletop gaming, the recent surge in interest. At the same time, not everyone that comes to tabletop gaming feels the need to start a convention. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny in a way. So it actually started off as a joke, actually wanting to do a convention. So before that, I used to run game nights at my house, and I used to run like a monthly board game night at our work, but it was kind of open to everyone. And I have like an events organizing background anyway. I used to kind of manage a bar, and we used to do a bunch of events there. And then where I work now, my first job was in running holidays for 100+ people, and I would have to do everything for them, all the entertainment and everything. So I had kind of that background in a way, I guess. And then I just kind of thought, well, that there's two things that match up here. But the very first one was, I think my wife was going away on a hen do for a weekend, and I was just like, oh, as a kind of bit of a joke, I'll have some people around to my house and call it a convention, and that's how it started. And then I was at work, and I was researching how other conventions got their names. And so Gen Con is named after Lake Geneva. So I was like, well, what bodies of water are near my house? And there's the River Aire that runs right through Leeds, and we're in the Aire Valley and Aireborough and all of that. So I was like, oh, AireCon, that's really funny. And then I've still got somewhere a copy of the first logo I came up with, and it says like AireCon, it's cool. So I've never used that.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's terrible. But it was all
but
like,
good.
Yeah, but it was all just like a joke, and I love puns and stuff. So that's really why it started. And
see when Josh and myself first heard that the convention was called AireCon, we equated that with the town of Ayr, which is quite close to Glasgow.
Yeah.
And I think you saw the meme that we made about it being in a farmer's field.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that was quite well received. So
yeah, that's so good. So that's why I did that first one in my house, and then I think shortly after that we went to a games expo. I think it was maybe the third one that I'd been to, and then my friend Ben was there as well, and we just had such a brilliant time. And it's although we love all the trade stuff and we love seeing all the new stuff coming out, it was the actual kind of gaming experiences. We just had a really amazing sort of 2 a.m. Game of Battlestar Galactica, and we'd had a really good game of Freedom, the Underground Railroad, and things like that. And it was just like, wow, we want to do more of this. And so then we kind of got back and we looked around, and there wasn't really much at the time. So this is now maybe 4 years ago. And there is a few, but they were all kind of spread out through the year. So we were like, well, maybe we should just do something locally, and we'll have a go and just see if anyone wants to come. And that's how we decided that AireCon would become a proper thing, with no real grand intentions of, this could be something mega one day. We just thought, well, we'll stick a bunch of tables in a room and do some other fun stuff as well, and see if people want to come and enjoy themselves.
Yeah, so that was 4 years ago, is that right?
When we started thinking about it. So the first Maybe 3.5 years. So the first ever one, that first one in my house, was just under 3 years ago. So it was July 2015. But before we'd run that was when we thought, well, shall we start actually planning a proper one? So the first proper event, the first public one, was April 2016.
So the first proper one in 2016, how many attendees did you have at that one?
So we had about 100, but we had capped it. So we didn't want to grow too quickly. We wanted to kind of learn along the way. So we capped it at 100. So we sold out at that one. And then we did another one 6 months after that, later on, 2016. And we got about 250. We used the same building. We were in Bradford then. And so we used the same building, but we just took up more of the space in that building. Yeah. So that was about 250. And we so that was another sellout one because we capped that as well. But in between those two, we were kind of like, well, actually, this is getting quite a lot of interest. And so that's where we looked around, and between the two of us, just did loads of research around where else we could go because we were quickly outgrowing this venue. We visited many hotels and conference centres and things like that. And then we got chatting to Nabil and Rick, who run Travelling Man, which is they have a small chain of shops around the north here of board game and comic shops. And so we got chatting to them, and they also run a huge comic book festival in Leeds. And they kind of said, well, have you thought about going to Harrogate Convention Centre? We've always thought of running an event there. And that's really kind of when we got the partnership with them. Yeah. And some of their experience and stuff of organising these kind of large events has been really valuable. So we went to check out Harrogate, and we were really blown away by the venue and by the team as well, I think, because I think that's part of it. You hear from other people that run these large events, and the staff at those venues are maybe not that helpful. But these guys were just really on board with it. They were just so interested. They were all like, well, what do you actually do? Like, and it's those typical questions of like, so like Monopoly? And you're like, well, kind of. So they came to that second Bradford event that we did and just saw what we did. And they were like, oh, really? So people really do just come and sit at a table and play games nonstop for as long as they can. And you're like, yeah, that's what we told you that happens. And so they were really excited about having an event like that. Because they didn't have anything similar. They'd never even had a Comic-Con or anything like that. So, but they're just so helpful, and that was part of the reason why we chose there was just they're so open to kind of some of the stuff that we want to do, and
quite accommodating then.
Yeah, really, really accommodating and very helpful.
So to put things into perspective for our listeners, that first AireCon proper.
Yeah.
In 2016, you had 100 attendees.
Yes, 100.
And the AireCon 2018 that has just been, I think from what I remember from reading the stats, you had 1,500 unique visitors. Is that right?
Yeah, we were just short of 1,600. We were like trying to go out onto the road and get random strangers to come in. We needed 6 more people, and we would have hit 1,600. Yeah.
But that is a massive leap in attendance over, what's that, a 2-year period?
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to?
I'm not really sure. And I've tried to. So we've had other people that have, in the meantime, thinking about starting conventions or starting their own events, have been in touch with us and kind of said, how has this happened? What have you done to make this happen? And I think it's, part of it is maybe just it's that kind of right time, right place kind of thing. There's nothing else really in this area. There's nothing in Manchester or Newcastle or anywhere else nearby. And I think we were maybe just almost at the head of that kind of wave of people starting events, and yeah, we're just fortunate. And I think maybe there's no other kind of large event in the UK where it's like the focus is on the gaming rather than maybe the trade stuff. And I think it was, just trying to do it through making sure it was an event that we wanted to go to ourselves. And so Ben Ben often says that he's gutted that he runs AireCon because he wants to go to it. He wants to attend. But so that's kind of the lens that we do everything through when we're trying to plan and stuff, is like, well, is this something that we would want to do? Is this something that we would think was fun, want to go to ourselves? And so maybe it's just that. And yeah, so it's not that helpful if someone else is like thinking of starting their own, unfortunately, that we don't really know why it's happened. But I think, there's, like I said, the hobby's growing. There's, certainly people wanting to go to more events and things like this, and always looking for the next thing. And I think at the minute you can probably go to something at least every month, if not every couple of weeks, from kind of probably February through to August time or October time even. And I think that's great. And there's other ones popping up now. So they did the one in Bristol, City of Games, their first one. They had 200 and something people there, I think. And then I think the guys from Tabletop Scotland said they're expecting about 500 or 600 people, which is great. There's one running down in Kent where they're expecting over 100 people for their kind of first proper event. So, there's obviously people wanting to go to these things. And
I think certainly geography is on your side, isn't it? Because really AireCon is the premier tabletop event for the north of England at the moment.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think because of it's actually kind of, so we are in obviously north of England, but actually when you look at the UK as a whole, we're pretty much smack bang in the middle. So we've had the guys coming down from Scotland and yourselves as well. I think Duncan, who's one of the Tabletop Scotland guys, he's come to 2 or 3 AireCons, so he came quite.
Duncan Cowan,
yeah,
who owns more board games than is healthy for any individual to own.
Yeah, and so certainly, and you've kind of got the M62 corridor where you do have those big cities like Liverpool, Manchester, even Hull, Leeds, all along that way, and then you kind of got the M1 going up and down. So I think it is kind of, it's fairly easy for a good chunk of the population to come to. So
do you know, it's funny, it's actually quicker to get to Birmingham from Glasgow than it is to get
is it?
Because we've got this awkward thing where we need to come all the way down and then go back up to get to Harrogate, just because of the way that the train lines go.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, I was over in Glasgow about 2 weeks ago, and it was, I think on the way up we had to go via Edinburgh and change, and then on the way back down we came like via Manchester and had to change.
It's bizarre, and I even saying that to a few of the people that had come up from the south of England, was saying it's actually quicker for us to get to the Midlands, bizarrely. But it's because you're having to go around the Yorkshire Dales to get there, so that's why. The last AireCon 2018, you actually had some quite prestigious guests.
So we had some of the guys. So we'd always done this thing with inviting people that were doing YouTube shows or doing podcasts or blogs and things. We'd always invited people along. It's like they're already probably the people that are very enthusiastic about the hobby anyway. So any chance to go to some kind of convention, they're usually up for it. But then we had spoken to. So randomly, I had reached out to Rodney Smith at Watch It Played, and it was more. I didn't actually think he would say yes and come to this one. It was more trying to just start the conversation, thinking maybe about 2019 or even 2020, because when you kind of look around, and it's that sort of fairly typical thing, I suppose, just because of numbers, that actually probably the biggest names within board gaming, especially YouTube channels and stuff, are mostly in America, or Canada for Rodney. But we wanted to try and promote British or UK kind of talent at the same time. So we just had a look to see what we could do, see who was coming, and who was around. But when I sort of reached out to Rodney and I said, "Oh, do do you maybe fancy coming over? And he suggested we Skype, and then in the first place I was like, wow, okay, so you're actually taking this kind of seriously. And then he's just such a nice guy when I was chatting to him over Skype. You know, his kind of reputation precedes him, really. Everyone always says he is, and then you kind of meet him and he's like, oh yeah, he is actually nice. I don't know why you're so surprised about it. Expect him to just be like a real douchebag or something. But yeah, no, he was really nice, and he was really up for it. And we kind of looked at travel and looked at costs, obviously, of getting him over, and it actually worked out okay because of where he is in Canada. He's very far east. And he was up for it. And when he kind of found out what we were trying to do with the convention and like why we did it, he thought it would be the kind of right thing for him. And we were obviously really chuffed to have him over as because of his reputation. And we hadn't actually at that point approached anyone else. Like, he was that kind of one person. And so it was really amazing when he did say yes. And we were like, wow, okay. We better make this good then to make it worth his while. And then so we just looked for other ways that we could do things while he was here with some of the other the guys that are here working hard, because I think it's really like still very much a passion hobby. Like, you know, it's not one that you would get into to try and make a fortune quickly.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, I personally can attest that if anyone thinks that getting into tabletop gaming journalism is a lucrative pursuit, you're wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the vast majority of us do it on a voluntary basis, and if we're able to cover our costs, then great. But
that's a bonus, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I think it's still very much the same with everything. Even like organising AireCon, we don't get paid anything at this stage.
Yeah.
We are doing it all in our spare time around our full-time jobs and things like that. But we do it because we love it, and I think it's the same with, you know, the media side of things as well. People do it because they love it and they want to share their love of the hobby.
Absolutely.
And so we just, we wanted to do what we could. So that's why we put on a bunch of events at AireCon, try and help people kind of maybe get some new viewers or listeners or readers.
How do you feel that AireCon 2018 went?
Personally, I think it went pretty well. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, you know, we send out the feedback form, and we get maybe about 10% of people responding to that. And you know, generally, everyone seems to have loved it. There's always things that you can improve, and there's things that I think we'll be working on. We're going to try and do like a Facebook Live feedback on the feedback thing at some point, and just do things. Unfortunately, some of the stuff just comes down to money, right? So, you know, trying to build an app for the bring and buy or something, that's obviously something we'd love to do, but it costs money. And like I said, at the minute, we're only really just covering costs at this stage. But yeah, generally, like, it's what we wanted it to be. There was always enough space for people to find games and find a space to play a game, which was what we're maybe slightly worried about, is because we want people to be able to do that. So, but there was always enough space, which was good. So we were happy with that. Everyone seemed to be having a good time. There was people saying that they were joining Games with Strangers, which is what we really love to see. And we know that there's people that came to some of those very first AireCons and met when it was really small, and they're still now meeting up at future ones. And I love that kind of thing. Like, and that's the only time they actually are able to get together, because they live in like wildly different parts of the country. And so seeing those kind of friendships formed and things like that is what really, like, that's what we would say counted as a successful event. It's just that people had a great time, that they were able to play a bunch of games, that they were able to meet people that they'd not met before and play games with them. And yeah.
Do you have any plans for things that you want to implement into future AireCons that you're able to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly there's certainly lots of stuff we'd love to do, like, you know, around digitizing certain things like the board game library and the bring and buy, especially because they're just so popular and so busy. So anything that you have to do manually or like handwritten is going to take more time. So at some point we would love to do things like that. Whether we can do it for next year, I'm not sure. But yeah, at some point we'd love to do that. I think we're going to go back and look at the venue again and just see about maybe using some of the other halls, because they have a bunch of halls. They've got something like 12 different halls. So we only used one of them this time. And so just looking at the space that we have and maybe just trying to predict growth for next year. And just see, because what we want to try and do is always make sure there's a seat at the table for everybody that comes. That's kind of our thing that we want to try and do and focus on that. We will probably always likely have exhibitors and traders and stuff. But, you know, like maybe just looking at making sure there's always space for the open gaming first, and then seeing what we've got left to do other stuff with.
It's safe to say that the focus of AireCon is always going to be on that social side of the gaming, on sitting down at a table and actually playing games.
Yeah, definitely. People. And you know, and the feedback we get every time is like that's what people loved. And when we were first trying to think about doing a public event a couple of years ago, we just went around a bunch of different game clubs because there's quite a good community here near us. So we went to all the different game clubs and we just chatted to people and just said, you know, what do you want from a convention if we were to start one? And time again, it was just like, well, we just want someone to play games, which is kind of funny because you could do that anywhere, but for some reason there's something extra about doing it at a convention. I don't know why. Whether it's the buzz in the room, whether it's that there's more choice of games or just different games or different people. I have no idea, but there's something about it that people really enjoy. So that's where we'll keep our focus. And kind of in our survey, we just asked, what did you like? What could be improved? That kind of thing. And about half of the respondents from just an open text box put in that they love the amount of gaming space. So we want to try and keep that central while still doing the other stuff. And we'll look at maybe other things, like I would love to get some retro arcade games, or you know, the old tables where you still playing with someone, things like that. But yeah, or things like the giant Suro that we had, or the big escape room game thing that we had going on. Things like that where it's, you know, it's just fun and it's a little bit silly and it's just people getting together and having a laugh and not taking it too seriously. I think that's
absolutely. So one of the things that Charlotte wanted to ask, she obviously had to cut out early because of a particularly noisy tortoise in the Unlucky Frog studio. She wanted to ask, your mum was helping out at the convention.
Oh, yeah.
Was that through necessity, or do you quite like it being a family affair?
Yeah, I quite like it, and she loves it. So she first came maybe two events ago. I can't remember when we had we actually, for our volunteer team, we printed T-shirts with their names on, and then we had like a form that was like, how would you like to be known, or what do you want your name printed on as? And she put in Mark's mum, and then that's kind of stuck ever since. That it's like, oh, it's Mark's mum. But yeah, she is really like loves helping out at things like that. So she's volunteered at quite a few different athletics things. So she was up at was it the Commonwealth Games that were in Glasgow a couple of years ago? Yeah,
that's right.
And then she went over to Rio to help out at the Olympics. She was down in London helping out at the Olympics. I think she's going to the next one in Sydney next, which is a World Athletics or something. So she just really loves volunteering and helping out, and she really loves people. So she loves being
always helps at conventions.
Yeah. So she likes being on the things like the tuck shop or the library and stuff, where she just gets to meet a bunch of different people. So it's great. And then my wife has also helped out at a couple previously, but we just had a baby back in June, so she was kind of on baby duty this year. But she's already sort of saying, well, maybe next year my mum and dad could look after Lottie whilst AireCon's on, and then I can help out again. And then I think my brother as well, he was volunteering this year, so it's just, I have a very helpful family, thankfully.
Absolutely, and I think that this is one of the things that's quite unique about tabletop or analog gaming, is that where video games, there can be a bit of a disconnect for people who don't have any interest in that. With you talked about things like the giant Suro. Even the social element of it, there's something about the spectacle of people getting together to play games. That social element that is absent, or at least takes a back seat in video games.
Or it's certainly harder to kind of say, like you have to look at a screen to be able to do this thing. So it's harder to get that social interaction. But I think even if you're not playing games at a tabletop convention, you're just walking around and seeing what other people are playing, and like some of the games that you get, even things like Meeple Circus, where you just kind of stack things up as high as you can, or games like that just look amazing on a table. It's great to be able to go around and just look at what's happening as well as getting involved in playing as well.
So very briefly before we finish up, we've alluded a couple of times to this board gaming boom that we seem to be in the middle of. We've even suggested that perhaps a lot of AireCon's success is due to the fact that it quite fortunately coincided with this board gaming boom. When this really first emerged, I mean, we talked about Will Wheaton's tabletop show. I mean, like Josh and myself, that was what piqued our interest in board games. When that first started a few years back. And one of the things that we talked about is, does the bubble have to burst at some point, or do you think that it's brought about a cultural shift that's here to stay?
I would imagine it's maybe a mix of both. I'm not sure that a bubble can partly pop. I don't know, but I think some things will change. Like, I don't think we can keep going at the rate that games are being released and things like that. Of whatever it was, is it 3,000 last year? Someone said 2,000 them being at Essen or something, and so I think that might slow down at some point. But I don't necessarily think the amount of people getting into the hobby will slow down anytime soon. And I think, again, I was thinking about this a little while ago when so AireCon was featured in Tabletop Gaming magazine just before the event, and I was trying to find a copy of Tabletop Gaming magazine, and I went out into kind of all these, about 5 or 6 different I happened to be in London at the time, 5 or 6 different huge W.H. Smiths, like massive ones. And I was looking through, and there's like 15 different magazines just about catching cod or something. Like, not even just fishing magazines, specifically one type, or carp, sorry, not cod. And then I was kind of thinking, man, and I'm struggling to find this one magazine about tabletop gaming. So I was like, in a way, it's still fairly small, right? And people still think of Monopoly or Cluedo or those kinds of games as the big games. And so I would still say there's a way to go in terms of getting it out and getting people to getting other people into the hobby. But I think we're getting there. People are starting to now, certainly people that I work with know more about Catan and things like that. But I still think, I think when you're in it, it feels like it's rapidly growing, and you see like Facebook groups that are going over 10,000 members and things like that. But from the outside still, I think there's still there maybe a way to go. But I think, so I kind of maybe half answered the question. So I think there is some bubble that will maybe, or some slowing down of in terms of the releases of games and things like that. But I still think it's got a way to go in terms of growth of the hobby. And I think it will happen. I think people are sort of maybe kicking back a bit about the digitization of everything. and people are looking for opportunities to socialize with other people and chat to other people. And I think board gaming does that in a really great way, because immediately you've got something in common between you that you're in the game that you're playing, right? So you've got instantly something to talk about, even if you've got wildly different political views or whatever. You still can talk about the game, and you can still talk about the moves that you're doing, or what you think of the game, or the theme, or whatever. And I think that's very different to a lot of other hobbies. A lot of other hobbies are, you kind of sit there. It's almost quite a solo experience.
Yeah.
So I think we'll still continue to see a growth of the hobby in terms of people coming in. But thankfully, because there has been so many games released over the years, there's like this wealth of back catalogue that they can get into and try and play.
It's almost as though the rise of analog gaming is a direct kickback to the rise of social media and the digitization, like you're saying, of pretty much everything, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And just think about how weirdly important a phone is these days, especially if you use it as a payment thing as well. And just does so much, this little thing in your pocket, that when I first got a phone, whenever I was 15, 16 or whatever, and it was, I could play Snake on it, and I could call my mum, and I could text my friends, and that was pretty much it. And then beyond that, it stayed in my pocket, and I wandered around and I still chatted to people. But now it's just, we do so much on them. And I think people are wanting to kind of actually find an excuse to put it down, and it's kind of hard. It's hard to find other things outside of that, because as soon as you say, you can play this on your phone, or you can socialize on your phone, or you can do this. And so I think it's kind of a funny thing where it's like, I don't think the hobby could grow as quickly as it could without social media, because there's a bunch of stuff that happens on Twitter, on Facebook and things like that. But at the same time, I think people are wanting to find excuses to kind of put it down for a bit and go, look, I want to engage in something. And especially like the tactile nature of a lot of board games and things like that as well. It's just something very different from pressing buttons on your phone to be able to pick up pieces and move them around and slot stuff together and have a hand of cards and stuff. Definitely a bit of a pushback against some digitalization, I think, and just people wanting to chat to people again. We're social creatures.
Oh, no, definitely pack animals.
Yeah,
just slightly less hairy monkeys at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we look forward to seeing how AireCon develops over the coming years. I expect it's got a lot of growth yet to go.
Like at the minute, we're kind of happy with how it's going. We'd always said that we don't want to sacrifice the kind of the atmosphere and the friendly, welcoming vibe that it has for growth. So if we ever felt that we were losing some of that kind of family-friendly feeling, I think we would probably try and stop the growth, a bit like BGG Con does in America. So I think they limit it at about 3,000 or 4,000 people. Mm-hmm. And they're never going to go above that. But what they do is do other events instead. So they do like BGG at Sea, and they do 2 Board Game Geek events, I think, now in a year. So it might be that we go down that route rather than just endless growth and trying to become the next Essen or whatever, or the next Gen Con, and have hundreds of thousands of people. Although that might be better for my bank balance. I don't know.
That's true. Well, whatever the future holds for AireCon, we wish you all the best for that.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for coming on the show, Mark.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great.
And for our listeners at home, on the bus, wherever you are, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are Unlucky Frog Gaming, and I am Ben. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Unlucky Frog Gaming. You can also show your support by giving us money through the Unlucky Frog Patreon. And be sure to check out our website, unluckyfrog.com, to find out more.